West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
We begin with the new January 6th investigation developments. Late Friday, the committee issued a subpoena for Secret Service records following the revelation that the agency had erased text messages from the day before and the day of the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Last Tuesday's hearing detailed a chaotic White House meeting between the former president, White House counsel Pat Cipollone, and a group of outside advisors over a plot to seize ballot boxes and overturn the 2020 election. This week, the panel will hold a primetime hearing on Thursday focused on the 187 minutes from the time when President Trump left the stage at that rally in the Ellipse.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol
until he issued that infamous video message.
So go home. We love you. You're very special.
Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger will be co-leading that hearing on Thursday. Good morning to you.
Morning.
So let's start with these Secret Service texts. The agency said this was just a matter of timing and a tech upgrade. Do you believe that, or was this malicious?
I think we're going to know more Tuesday. We made the decision as the committee that we need to subpoena these records. The IG came in front of us and said, look, we have been working hard to get this. They claim it was this technological change. We moved everything. We lost these texts. And then they also put out a statement, though, that said, we've only lost some of the text and everything relevant to this investigation has been turned over. So those are very conflicting statements. So we decided as a committee, let's request these by Tuesday and we can make a decision. I will say this, in the very least, it is quite crazy that the Secret Service would actually end up deleting anything related to one of the more infamous days in American history, particularly when it comes to the role of the Secret Service.
So the subpoena set Tuesday as the deadline. So has the Secret Service said we will meet that deadline and these texts still do exist somewhere?
That's what from what we understand, they've said we'll meet this deadline and we'll see what we get here. So either we get that information.
They exist still in record.
We don't know. So either we get that stuff. If we end up getting the text, then obviously for whatever reason the IG didn't. Now you have what you have. If we don't, then it'll call out the Secret Service as having said that they had these texts and they don't. So, is this anything big? We're not sure. But we need to chase every lead down on this. And there's a question of why are they not cooperating with the IG, the DHS IG, and they need to.
So the committee has, though, spoken in the past with some Secret Service officers. So do you have a date yet to question the two in particular, Tony Ornato, about what happened January 6th? Of course, he's relevant because of Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony about what happened in the vehicle.
Look, we're still working on that. We'd love to have him come in. We're working out those details. We know that through, I guess, anonymous sources, they've said they're going to be happy to come in and testify. we would encourage anybody that knows anything, but it's got to be under oath. Right now, it's just been discussion from Secret Service through anonymous sources, and that to me, compared to somebody like Cassidy Hutchinson, who swore under oath, what she had heard, that's important to come in and do that. So it's still ongoing, but hopefully we get that.
Will you get that by Thursday in this hearing?
I highly doubt we'll get them coming in and talking by Thursday. But again, I would love that. But we keep getting new people coming in every day with information, willing to go on the record. So it's been amazing how since these hearings have started, the amount of information we're getting has just rapidly accelerated.
CNN was reporting that a D.C. police officer who had been somehow involved in the motorcade arrangements was corroborating the testimony given by Cassidy Hutchinson that there was an almost violent confrontation with the former president in the vehicle that day. Is that what the committee has been told? I can't confirm or deny those because we haven't come out with who we have or haven't spoken to. I'll just say I'm not going to aggressively push back on that characterization, and we have every reason to believe that what Cassidy Hutchinson said, at least from what she said she heard, because she wasn't in the limo, never said she was. She was told this by other.
She was told this.
Officers.
We fully believe that she is a credible witness, and her allegations are quite explosive.
So 187 minutes. You're leading this hearing. You know what you can present at this point. Can you at least tell us if you filled in the blanks of, who the president was actually speaking with, why there weren't phone records, for example, of phone calls he may have placed during that time period?
We have filled in the blanks. I can't necessarily say that the motives behind every piece of information we know we'll be able to explain, but this is going to open people's eyes in a big way. The reality is, I'll give you this preview, the president didn't do very much, but gleefully watch television during this time frame. We're going to present a lot more than that. But I could only imagine I knew what I felt like as a U.S. congressman. If I was a president sworn to defend the Constitution, that includes the legislative branch, watching this on television, I know I would have been going ballistic to try to save the Capitol. He did quite the opposite.
The president didn't do anything?
The president didn't do anything, and we're going to fill those blanks in. And if the American people watch this, particularly I say this to my fellow Republicans, watch this with an open mind. And is this the kind of strong leader you really think you deserve?
The chairman of the committee, Benny Thompson, has said you all are still discussing whether to go ahead and try to force a conversation with the former Vice President, Mike Pence. His former chief of staff, Mark Short, said on this program, this is very low likelihood of ever happening. Do you personally want to subpoena Mike Pence?
Look, I personally want to talk to Mike Pence. I think there's a difference between do we subpoena him, do we ask him for a transcribed interview. I think it would be important to hear everything he has to say. That said, I'm not sure we get a ton more out of him than what his staff has already told us. The big question we're still dealing with as a committee is there benefit in talking to somebody like Donald Trump and requesting he come in? That's something we're negotiating back and forth on whether we want to do that and what that looks like.
What is the value in speaking directly to the former president and the vice president when the former vice president's chief of staff and his, legal advisor have testified to you? Why do you need him physically there? And what would the president's testimony do?
Yeah, and I'm not sure we do need them physically there because, again, we're getting a lot of information, and I think you'll see after Thursday's hearing we know a lot. Look, Donald Trump has made it clear that he doesn't mind not telling the truth. Let's just put that mildly. He lies all the time. I wouldn't put it past him to even lie under oath. So I'm not sure what the value is there. That's, again, something I think the thing to keep in mind is this investigation is not winding down. We may be towards the end of this tranche of hearings. We may have more hearings in the future, and the investigation is still ongoing. So we're getting to the bottom of what we need to know.
Tranche of hearings. What does that mean? I mean, how many are you thinking?
Well,
what
we've
more
done.
Do you have?
This will be our 8th hearing. This is the end in this kind of grouping. I fully expect that when the report comes out, we may have a hearing or two around that. But of course, as you saw with Cassidy Hutchinson, if we get information that the American people need to know, we may end up bringing up more hearings at that time too.
So I want to ask you about the former Overstock CEO, Patrick Byrne, who spoke, I guess, for 8 hours behind closed doors with the committee the other day. He said to reporters There is so much interest in the December 18th Oval Office meeting because it all comes down to it. The crux of history comes down to it. And then his lawyer said, stop talking. What's the rest of the sentence? Exactly what is the crux of history here?
I don't know. It's hard to get into the mind of somebody like Patrick Byrne. It's hard to get into the mind of somebody like Rudy Giuliani. Is this a grift? Do they really believe some of these conspiracies? But he has been, it seems like Patrick has come to believe that there is some deep state conspiracy to overthrow the government, and or to at least have the deep state way of the government. And so I don't know what would have come next in his mind, but I can tell you he seems a little unmoored from reality when it comes to politics and when it comes to democracy.
So Mother Jones published audio this week of Steve Bannon, who was speaking to a group of associates in October, I understand this was recorded, about the former president's plan to declare victory. Let's listen to what he said.
And what Trump's going to do is just declare victory, right? He's going to declare victory. But that doesn't mean he's the winner. He's just going to say he's the winner. That's our strategy. He's just going to declare himself a winner. So when you wake up Wednesday morning, it's going to be a firestorm.
What does that indicate to you? Steve Bannon speaks sometimes in hyperbolic terms. Does that indicate to you that there was a level of planning going back that far?
Oh, yeah. I think, look, if you look at the president's statements even months prior to the election, he started saying, if we lose, it's because it's going to be stolen. There was, I think it was Chris Stirewalt came in on our second hearing and talked about that idea of the red mirage, how early in the night it'll look like Republicans are winning, and then later it will be the obvious result. I think Democrats were ahead in Ohio significantly even at the beginning of the night. Steve Bannon is an agent of chaos. Steve Bannon, in his own words, believes you have to basically burn the system down to rebuild it and fix it. What he's saying right there is very clearly him saying, no matter what, we're declaring victory. And that is a violation of everything we have to hold dear in a constitution. Listen, the only thing we need for democracy to survive is the knowledge that you can vote, that vote counts, and we live with the winner or loser. If half the country believes that wasn't accurate, you can't expect democracy to survive.
I want to ask you about what's going on in Georgia. Your fellow Republican Senator Lindsey Graham is challenging a subpoena by a grand jury there. They want to ask him questions about this call that he placed to the Secretary of State there around the election. Graham said he's done nothing wrong. Is there a reason the January 6th committee has not spoken to him? Are there questions you have for him?
Well, look, the question of is there reasons? Well, first off, we have a lot of information in terms of what happened in Georgia. That's a piece of our investigation. We have the whole broader thing of what led to January 6th, what's been done since. In terms of him, no, I haven't talked to Lindsey Graham personally. That's his decision with the grand jury and to challenge it. I'm not sure if his issues of speech and debate, which is what he claims the protection are. He was acting in his position as a senator. I'm not sure if that actually would apply to if you're attempting to change an election outcome. I'm not the lawyer. I don't know. But to me, it seems a little odd that he would try to pull that in terms of going in front of a grand jury and saying what you know.
It is Monday, the 18th of July of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Yes, we made it to Monday. What a weekend, huh? And wait for this week. It's going to be another one. Well, the attempted fascist takeover of the United States of America continues. Yes, it does. Rust never sleeps. So even when we thought that we were, we had punched the Nazis back in World War II, we're finding out that, yep, you got to keep punching the Nazis. Otherwise, you get these attempted fascist takeovers of representative democracy. They don't like it. Nope, they don't. Not one bit, because, hey, they want to be able to tell other people how to live. And if we don't listen to them, well, it's goodbye to us, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, well, I had somewhat of a weird experience over the weekend online. I just blithely posted about the Missouri statute that says that, women can't get divorced when they're pregnant. And that's not the only state that has that statute. Understandably, it is a law or laws that have been on the books since way before the Articles of Confederation, let me tell you. And I always like it when people remind me, this is nothing new about these laws. Yeah, well, the reason I brought it up is because of the rank hypocrisy and the pretzel logic that these Christo-fascist neo-Nazis, that is the Republican Party, have to contort themselves into to be able to, make it work. See, they're doing the Putin thing where they're giving us the color of democracy without the actual democracy itself. The idea that we can vote, but there's really no choice to vote for. But they're having trouble even with that. They would much rather just do the Nazi thing and say F you to the trains. Yeah, maggot, or whatever they call us. We're not maggots. Well, that's what Jews were called back in the day. Mm-hmm. That's why it's so delicious to call these Nazis maggots, because they are. Make America great. And then the TS, we should come up with something for the TS, for the plural. Mm-hmm. In terms of the acronym, just to make it make sense, because they don't make sense. So a woman in Missouri is the example that I was using. I know it's in Arkansas and other states, but I'm using Missouri. A woman in Missouri cannot get divorced when she's pregnant. And the reason for it is that the fetus is not a person until it is born. And so custody, support payments, etc., 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 cannot be adjudicated until the baby is born. So, in other words, it's not a person. And that's been understood since way before the Articles of Confederation. This idea that these angel babies have some sort of agency has only come up recently because of, the right-wing white nationalist evangelical movement. What is it? They're Christo-fascists. It only came up because of that. When they found, Jerry Falwell in particular, found out that a wedge issue that they could use in the Lee Atwater way, you can't really use the N-word, so you use something else like welfare queen. Found that they could push their white nationalist agenda by pushing the Great Replacement theory. They're trying to destroy the white race, and by they, you know who we mean. That was Falwell's message. And it was considered to be extreme when it started, and then it became embraced to the point that Jerry Falwell was invited to the Oval Office. Next thing you know, he has a university. All right. But hypocrites all, we know that. The maggot wing of the court, the Christo-fascist maggots on the Supreme Court, are pushing their Christo-fascist maggot philosophies down our throats. So, because I had blithely posted that, it somehow, I guess some national figure or somebody, retweeted it or something, because it went off. It got, I'm like inundated with things, with posts and replies and retweets, and it shows up on the timeline, and there's like hundreds and hundreds, to the point where I've had over 3 million impressions since I put it up, I think on Saturday. Or maybe it was Friday. Yeah, Friday. Anyway, when Denise Oliver Velez, my fellow editor on Black Co's, retweets something or likes it, I get quite a bit of a bump, and when David does it, the same thing, I get quite a bit of a bump, but not like this. So I believe some national figure mentioned it or something, because over 3 million, and it's coming in hot and heavy still. I did get a notification from Twitter that I could use a filter to, stop this. But at that point, it was like, oh, well, I'm getting 100,000 impressions. That's pretty damn good. I don't get those very often. And when Twitter gave me that notification, I thought, well, let's see where this goes. And little did I know, it would gum up my timeline. It's hard to reply to folks that I know, and we know, and you know me. So I'll scroll down till I can find you. But anyway, or figure out the filter, and then I'll be okay once again. But it was quite an experience. I found out that the old memes are coming back. I like the one where it shows a group of Nazis saying that these people didn't believe Jews were people. And then it shows a couple of pregnant women, and they're wearing T-shirts that say, abortion is my right, or whatever, or I just got an abortion, some sort of weird thing that I don't think you would ever see anybody wear. And if they were, it'd be to, obviously be in someone's face. But then that panel says, and these people believe that babies are not people. Of course, what they're saying is that the Nazis who genocided the Jews are the same as Jewish people of faith following Hebrew law, following rabbinical law, where in the Bible it talks about bitter waters, the use of bitter waters when the life of the mother is endangered by a pregnancy. The use of bitter waters is actually, well, shall we say, codified into law. Because up until these crystal fascist white nationalists decided that they were going to use the Great Replacement theory, they're going to genocide the white race. Yeah, that's going to happen. We didn't hear about this thing of personhood. And if you did, it was a very circumspect, small, tiny extremist group. Now they're mainstream because they've been pushed that way to the point where a 10-year-old has to carry a baby to term because God gave her an opportunity. Yeah, I got to tell you, some 9, 10-year-olds, when they give birth, they die. They're too young. All right. So it's all about control anyway. It's not about, the souls of these angel babies. They don't give an F about the souls of the angel babies. They don't give an F about the souls of living people. 6, 7-year-olds slaughtered. 10, 11-year-olds slaughtered. Grandmas, grandpas slaughtered. Old Jewish people. Young Jewish people. Middle-aged Jewish people. A synagogue full of Jewish people. Slaughtered. And they have the audacity to say that we are the problem. Yeah, I guess we are. They keep wanting to slaughter us. What did we do to them except, advance the great experiment of equal protection and due process for all, and that is what it means. I do not understand why women ever had second-class citizenship, second-class status. Not quite human. They're nothing more than cattle. I don't know. Do we elevate cattle to something a little bit more exalted so we can bring up the lot of women? Please. People are people. The unborn are the unborn. Okay, I get it. But this idea of injecting the concept of soul and the Christian concept of the soul at that, which I should tell people is the Socratic conception of the soul, but it's been a little twisted by these Christo-fascist white nationalists. We don't need to have that codified in the public square. That is a personal matter. And that's what the idea of a separation of church and state meant. That it doesn't matter what your personal beliefs are in terms of your religion. In the public square, we follow a set of rules that does not take into consideration your superstition. I believe it was the Missouri AG. I can't remember now who it was, but it was one of these AGs. He was asked, even to save the life of a mother, you're saying there's no exceptions? And he says, yes, no exceptions. A 10-year-old who has been raped and impregnated should be forced to carry the baby to term? And he said yes. And then when asked why, he said, that is my personal belief. And he's pushing laws predicated upon his personal belief, which is nothing more than a superstition. Because I'll mention once again, rabbinical law talks about bitter waters. So if Alito or any of these other Christo-fascist white nationalists want to use some sort of past where it was the history of this, well, we can go back to Hebrew rabbinical law then, can't we? If you're going to cite witch burners from, the 1600s, we ought to be able to, cite some stuff from, a little bit before that, shouldn't we? Now, that's a rant on something that doesn't even mention what Idaho is doing right now. The Republicans in Idaho got taken over by a bunch of QAnon, election-denying, Christo-fascist, maggot white nationalists, where they've not only said that their platform will include no abortion even in the case where the life of the mother is jeopardized. They also have passed a resolution that should the Supreme Court ever decide that abortion is legal, that it is a constitutional right like it's been, they will apparently nullify that because they are seceding from the United States of America. The Republican Party is laying down the marker about their secessionist movement in which they will take up arms to violently overthrow the United States of America. And we allow this party to be a part of our electoral process when they have announced that they and their whole purpose is to destroy us. And then when they get into power, what do? They pass the enabling acts for themselves. Only they can decide how an election will be counted. Only they will be able to count the ballots in the so-called election, and only they will be able to determine how the rest of us live. And we allow it. I say we allow it no more. Easy to say, isn't it? Got to do something about it. I don't want to get to the point where we actually have to punch these Nazis like that grandma lady did to the Nazis over there. I think it was Germany, maybe it was Poland. Came up and hit them with her handbag. Showed a lot more fortitude than what we apparently are capable of. And I guess that could be exemplified by the recent body cam and security cam footage of the Uvalde event, if we want to call it that. Almost 400 cops, heavily armed by the way, across many agencies, and not one could decide who's going to take the lead. Boy, I never heard of that before. And I'm not being sarcastic. A bunch of hopped up, steroid-addled macho guys, and not one was willing to take the lead? Give me a break. Home of the brave? That's false advertising. That is fake news. All right. We do have a curated part of the show, and oh my, we have really just burned up the time. It's Monday. Had to get it off our chest because we got a lot to get off our chest, even in the curated part of the show. So why don't we give you a rundown of what we have in store for you today? Well, yes, at the top, Kinzinger said that the J6 committee has filled in the blanks, and this week's hearing will open people's eyes in a big way. On the rest of the menu in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Maryland Dems are eager to break the Republican stranglehold on the governor's office. A survey of state election officials across the U.S. found the expanded use of drop boxes for mailed ballots during the 2020 election did not lead to any widespread problems. And that's a survey of Republican and Democratic election officials, by the way. And a state-chartered bailout fund is seeking to borrow $600 million after seven Louisiana insurers went bust following 2021's Hurricane Ida. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Thai pro-democracy activists had their cell phones or other devices infected and attacked with government-sponsored Pegasus spyware, the same Pegasus spyware that wants to get into our United States. How nice. And French Holocaust survivors marked 80 years since the mass Paris Roundup. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. It is Monday, and we burned up so much time in the Monday morning rant. We're going to go right into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. And it is out of the Associated Press by Brian Witt. One of the best opportunities for Democrats to regain a governor's office this year is in Maryland, and the race to succeed term-limited Republican Larry Hogan has drawn a crowd of candidates. Winning back the seat shouldn't seem so tough for Democrats in a state where they outnumber Republicans by a 2-to-1 ratio, but somehow the GOP has won 3 of the past 5 elections. Nationwide, Republicans hold a 28-to-22 edge in governor's seats. Of the 36 governor's races this year, Maryland and Massachusetts represent the best chances for Democrats to narrow the gap. Maryland Democrats see an opening now because the popular Hogan, only the second Republican governor to win re-election in the state history, cannot seek a third term. That's attracted prominent Democrats to Tuesday's primary, that's tomorrow, including members of former President Barack Obama's cabinet, one-time Labor Secretary Tom Perez, who was also chairman of the Democratic Party, and ex-Education Secretary John King. Also in the race are Wes Moore, a best-selling author supported by Oprah Winfrey. Comptroller Peter Franchot, the state's tax collector who has name recognition in Maryland from 4 successful statewide races, and former Attorney General Doug Gansler. The primary winner will probably face either Kelly Schultz, a Republican endorsed by Hogan, or Dan Cox, who is backed by Donald Trump. Anthony Izaguirre and Christina A. Cassidy of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The expanded use of drop boxes for mailed ballots during the 2020 election did not lead to any widespread problems, according to an Associated Press survey of state election officials across the U.S. that revealed no cases of fraud, vandalism, or theft that could have affected the results. The findings from both Republican and Democratic-controlled states run contrary to claims made by Trump and his allies, who have intensely criticized their use and falsely claim they were a target for fraud. Drop boxes are considered by many election officials to be safe and secure, and I might add, for decades and decades and decades, and have been used to varying degrees by states across the political spectrum. Yet, conspiracy theories and efforts by Republicans to eliminate or restrict them since the 2020 election persist, and this month, the Wisconsin Supreme Court's conservative majority ruled that drop boxes are not allowed under state law and can no longer be widely used. Because, as I've said, and we've all said, for so long, you can't hack a mail-in ballot. That's why they don't want you to mail in a ballot. Associated Press staff bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. A state-chartered bailout fund is seeking to borrow $600 million after 7 Louisiana insurers went bust following 2021's Hurricane Ida. The Times-Picayune and the New Orleans Advocate report that the Louisiana Insurance Guarantee Association will seek approval of the plan to sell bonds this week. The association would recoup the money from surviving member insurers, but those insurers get a tax break for such assessment payments, meaning Louisiana taxpayers will ultimately pay the bill. The association pays the policyholder claims of insolvent insurers, making sure that individuals and businesses don't get stiffed when an insurer is overwhelmed by losses. The plan to issue bonds is an admission that the association cannot raise enough money on its own to pay roughly 24,000 claims it owes without making policyholders wait for years. It would be the first time the association borrowed to pay off claims since a nationwide auto insurance crisis in the early 1990s. Well, that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You're listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, The Gods of Thunder. Warning, small spoiler for 14 seconds. Once again, we get to see writer-director Taika Waititi play with the Marvel Cinematic Universe's toys in Thor: Love and Thunder, the thematic sequel to his Thor: Ragnarok. And as with many sequels, it's a lot of the same, but significantly different. Where Thor: Ragnarok was an action comedy with a healthy sideline of adventure drama, Love and Thunder is an action comedy with a healthy dose of romance melodrama, which, not that you asked or cared, I'm fine with, because I love me a good romance, and I love me some Natalie Portman as Jane Foster. Excuse me, Dr. Jane Foster. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jason Aaron, for writing the comic series that allowed the MCU to say to Portman, Nat, we know you weren't happy with how you were being girlfriended and damsel in distress in the first couple movies. We get it. So you probably aren't reading the comics, but there's been this whole thing. And, well, how'd you like to be Thor? Love and Thunder is balanced more towards the comedy than Ragnarok was. In that way, you should know this is not a movie meant to be deeply probed. For instance, there's this whole submotif about protecting children. Christian Bale plays this father whose daughter dies in the face of his uncaring god, turning the father into a god killer. Later on, he steals Asgardian children to bait Thor. Chris Hemsworth Thor, not Natalie Portman Thor, although he gets her as well, along with Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie and Waititi's Korg. It's a greatest hits collection. Here's the spoiler. So at first I thought, he's going to kill those hostages. But he didn't, and for once, that makes sense, because his whole thing should be about protecting kids, right? Yet, later on, both sides put them in danger, as the movie opts for having a really fun kid battle over thematic consistency. That's the type of movie Thor: Love and Thunder is. Giants straight from the memes, screaming goats, Russell Crowe's mighty Zeus with his wonderfully ridiculous Greek accent. For better or for worse, it almost always chooses accessibility and fun over anything else. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. They say you can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. But what if you had access to a remote-controlled carnivorous plant? Because researchers have engineered a bio-inspired system, an artificial neuron, if you will, that can trigger the snap of a Venus flytrap.
Hi, my name is Simone Fabiano, an associate professor at Linköping University in Sweden.
Fabiano designed the trap-springing device using nerve cells as a kind of bio-based blueprint.
The way our biological neurons work is that they integrate information from different input over time, perform computation, and communicate the results to other neurons by means of voltage pulses.
Now, standard silicone-based systems can also deliver electrical pulses, but if you want to couple them with something living to produce bionic prosthetics or engineer any kind of brain-machine interface, well, they suffer from several limitations.
Such as rigidity, poor biocompatibility, complex circuit structures, and operation mechanisms that are fundamentally different from those of biological systems.
To smooth biological integration, Fabiano built his system from polymers that conduct both electrons, like everyday electronics, and ions, which is how neurons get things done. It's the ions that
enable communication between biological and artificial neurons.
Each part of the artificial neuron, which the researchers describe in the journal Nature, has a direct counterpart in its biological role model.
We have an input terminal that acts as the biological neuron's dendrite.
That dendrite collects the incoming electrical signals and sends them to a capacitor, which, like a neuronal cell body, integrates the information. Then, once the voltage reaches a specific threshold, a pulse is fired along organic amplifiers that mimic a nerve cell axon.
We use the ionic concentration-dependent switching characteristics of our transistors to modulate the frequency of spiking, which is to a large extent analogous to biological systems.
So, the ions control the current that flows from the faux neuron to its target, in this case a live Venus flytrap, triggering the rapid-fire closure of its leafy appendages. All in all, a dramatic demonstration of the potential of neuromorphic design that should give interested engineers and interloping fruit flies something to watch out for. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Good eating habits developed in childhood can last a lifetime, but getting children to eat their fruits and vegetables is a common problem. Eating them adds important nutrients, helps control weight, and reduces the risks for many serious illnesses. Children in the U.S. are eating more fruit. However, 60% of children get fewer fruits than recommended, and 93% don't get enough vegetables. Childcare, schools, and school districts can help change this by meeting or exceeding federal nutrition standards for meals and snacks, including fruits and vegetables wherever food is offered, and helping children learn about and taste fruits and vegetables. At home, parents can eat a variety of fruits and vegetables with their children and provide them as snacks, even if it takes many tries. Also, parents can include their children when shopping for, growing, and preparing fruits and vegetables. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when it happened. There was a sudden jolt and our submarine crashed on the seafloor. We were in total darkness.
That's Dr. Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist and STEM teacher, talking about a deep sea dive she'll never forget.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the ocean, and there I was, 2 miles below the surface. But as a scientist, you prepare for that. Using our training and a little creativity, we fixed the sub and finished our experiments. The dive was just too important. Every dive gives us glimpses at things few people ever get to see. Glowing creatures, fiery undersea volcanoes. When we got back to the surface, I kissed the ground and called my mom, of course. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that dive for anything.
Dr. Figueroa uses her passion for STEM to discover new things and make the world a better place. She can STEM, so can you. Check out She Can STEM for more stories and inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to 60 Seconds Civics of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Today we begin a special series of podcasts to examine the question of whether power in the federal government is appropriately balanced between Congress and the executive and judicial branches. We will also learn how power has shifted from Congress to the executive and judicial branches of government and consider the implications of this shift. Scholar William Galston of the Brookings Institution has said that compared with the system of government designed by the framers of the Constitution, today's government is a constitutional world turned upside down. He argues that the framers intended the legislative branch to be incontestably the strongest branch of government. But today, we see that the executive and judicial branches are much stronger than what the framers had in mind, and that Congress is much weaker. How did this come about, and what implications does this shift have for American democracy? Stay tuned to our next episode, where we discuss the concept of a balance of powers. 60 Seconds Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
Now, what will happen to reproductive choice? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. A right is something that the government can't take away, which is why it's called a right, or so we once thought. The Supreme Court has abolished the constitutional right to abortion, a decision that leaves many questions unanswered. For example, does the Constitution still guarantee a right to privacy? How about a right to travel? What about state laws that create a vigilante civil system for anyone who wants to sue a person who seeks an abortion or assists in procuring an abortion? Are such laws constitutional? And what about a woman who leaves the state where she lives, where abortion is illegal, to have an abortion in a state where the procedure is legal? Can she be prosecuted when she returns home? The courts, ultimately the Supreme Court, will decide what constitutional limits, if any, there are to state laws targeting women who seek an abortion and those who would help them. Of course, laws as well as the Constitution can offer protection. Congress could pass, and some states are passing, laws that protect abortion. But a different Congress could do exactly the opposite, pass legislation that bans abortion. legislation that a different president might well sign into law. So, the one thing we can say with certainty is that reproductive rights are under grave attack, and that the future is at best uncertain, and potentially really scary. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1914. That was the day IWW songwriter Joe Hill was sentenced to be executed in Utah. He was convicted of murder, although the charges were likely trumped up. Hill grew up in Sweden. His father died from an occupational injury in 1877, and the children had to quit school and go to work. When Hill's mother died 2 years later, Joe came to America with his brother. He worked in various cities throughout the country. When he was in California in 1910, Joe joined the International Workers of the World. His songs were compiled into the IWW's Little Red Songbook. Hill had his first run-in with police during the San Pedro dock workers' strike in 1913. He was arrested and held for 30 days on the charge of vagrancy because, he said later, he was a little too active to suit the chief of the burg during the strike. In 1914, Hill was charged with the murder of a grocer and his son in Salt Lake City. The evidence was circumstantial. The jury found him guilty even though neither witness for the prosecution could identify Hill conclusively, and the gun used in the murder was never recovered. Hill penned the famous words, "Don't mourn, organize," in a letter to fellow IWW organizer Big Bill Haywood before his execution by firing squad. His body was cremated and the ashes mailed to IWW locals in every state but Utah.
I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you and me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 58 degrees Fahrenheit and expecting a high a bit warmer than yesterday. We only got up to about 88 yesterday. It was quite pleasant. We're expecting a high of about 95 today, with winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunny conditions should prevail throughout the day. Clear skies tonight, lows in the upper 50s, low 60s, winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And sunny skies tomorrow with highs around 100. Winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. We do have an update on coronavirus infections in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon, where we now stand at 476,099 confirmed cases, and our deceased has gone up 1 and now stands at 556. Grass pollen is rated high right outside the window here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the Rogue River Valley region is good at 25 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is very high at level 9. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.03 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 70%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is a blistering 98 degrees Fahrenheit with a heat advisory. Paris is a blistering 101 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny with a heat advisory. Rome is 95 degrees Fahrenheit and fair with a heat advisory. Kyiv is 70 degrees and fair. Kabul is 80 and clear. Hong Kong is 85 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 82 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 50 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 56 degrees and fair with a fog advisory onshore and offshore. And New York is 81 degrees Fahrenheit, cloudy with a small craft advisory, so do take care. And that is Weather from Around the World, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Elaine Kurtenbach and Zen Su of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Cybersecurity researchers reported details of cases where Thai activists involved in the country's pro-democracy protests had their cell phones or other devices infected and attacked with government-sponsored spyware. Investigators of the internet watchdog group Citizen Lab, Thailand's Internet Law Reform Dialogue, or ILAW, and Digital Reach said at least 30 individuals, including activists, scholars, and people working with civil society groups, were targeted by an unnamed government entity or entities for surveillance with Pegasus, a spyware produced by the Israeli-based cybersecurity company NSO Group, who are lobbying to get into the United States as we speak.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Angela Charlton and Jade Ledelay of the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. French President Macron decried his Nazi collaborator predecessors and rising anti-Semitism, vigorously vowing to stamp out Holocaust denial as he paid homage to thousands of French children sent to death camps 80 years ago for one reason alone, because they were Jewish. Family by family, house by house, French police rounded up 13,000 people on 2 terrifying days in July of 1942, wresting children from their mothers' arms and dispatching everyone to Nazi death camps. France honored those victims this weekend as it tries to keep their memory alive. For the dwindling number of survivors of France's wartime crimes, a series of commemoration ceremonies yesterday, Sunday, were especially important. At a time of rising anti-Semitism and far-right discourse sugarcoating France's role in the Holocaust, they worry that history's lessons are being forgotten. A week of ceremonies marking 80 years since the Val d'Aviv police rounded up on July 16th and 17, 1942, culminated Sunday with an event led by Macron, who pledged that would not happen ever again. He denounced former French leaders for their roles in the Holocaust and the Val d'Eve raids, among the most shameful acts undertaken by France during World War II. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme aux langues de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.